Experts are experts from the past. They're not experts of the future. And basically, in order to build the future, sometimes you need to let go of assumptions of the past. There was a professor at MIT, I was telling him about some KOL who told me something, and he said, KOLs are basically just people who have been working on the problem for a long time and haven't solved it yet. My son was diagnosed with a rare genetic disease called Charcot Marie Tooth disease type 1A or CMT1A, and that's when I started my third career in bio. It feels like the Matrix where there's the red pill and blue pill. You can take this pill and, this never happened. Or you can take this pill and your life will basically never be the same.
See how deep the rabbit hole goes or whatever.
Whatever the expression
Morpheus
is.
saying, At 17, I was diagnosed with a rare disease, and when my younger sister was diagnosed with the same, I was unwilling to accept that there was nothing we could do to treat ourselves. That's why I went on a decade-long journey to figure out what was possible. I'm developing my own gene therapy and helping others do the same for their conditions. This isn't just about the science, it's actually about the humanity and what happens when you tell people that there is something they can do. These sets of conversations on this podcast, Solving Rare Disease, will go through all of the different things that it takes to go from a diagnosis to a customized treatment for a rare disease. Action creates hope. This is the fundamental thing I've learned as a rare disease patient trying to treat my own disease, and what I'm learning through many conversations with others doing the same. This is Solving Rare, with me, Stevie Ringel. Hey everyone, Stevie Ringel here. I'm a rare disease patient turned biotech builder, and I'm joined today by David Apple. David's an aspiring soccer player, turned engineer, turned biotech builder himself, and I'm really pleased to have a conversation around all things biotech. David, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Stevie.
Why don't you tell us about that journey? It's a really interesting one, and take us from your early career through why you're working on what you are now.
Yeah, I'm not a great soccer player.
That one's out immediately.
At some point I thought I might be, but I was very wrong. So I grew up in France, hence my love of soccer. I actually studied mechanical engineering and worked as an engineer for the first decade of my career, designing buildings and the sustainable aspect of buildings and renewable energy, all that stuff. Then I got my MBA, and that's when I switched into tech. And I was lucky to work at some kind of household names in tech, Typeform and Notion. I was employee 15 at Typeform, employee 13 at Notion, that went on to become multi-billion-dollar companies. I was on the go-to-market side, so I ran sales, customer success, and that side of the business. And my last role was I was the chief revenue officer of an AI startup. And then my son was diagnosed with a rare genetic disease called Charcot Marie Tooth disease type 1A or CMT1A. And that's when I took my started my third career in bio. And so I've since then immersed myself in the world of CMT, joining the board of the largest nonprofit in this space, the CMTA, and starting my own biotech.
It's quite a journey. Sorry the soccer thing didn't work out, but also from the state of our community, happy to have you here building. One of the things that's really interesting to me about Charcot Tooth Bio, which is your company, is that you went directly for a for-profit investable model, where a lot of people have started not-for-profit and merged the two. There's lots of different capital models here. Clearly, based on your tech background, you know what it takes to build a scalable business. Why did you think that in CMT you could actually build a scalable biotech? What were the underlying data points that you used to convince yourself and investors?
Yeah. It was a decision that had multiple kind of facets to it. One is I'm on the board of the Charcot Marie Tooth Association, and I'm very proud to be on that board. I love what we do, and I wanted to be on the board. Starting a competing nonprofit is not the way to continue to support friends. The CMTA. So that was not the biggest driver of the decision, but it was part of the decision. But really, what drove the decision was the realization that of the cost to get a drug to patients is very high. And while I believe I could have started a nonprofit and raised the money needed to get through the first few stages of the preclinical side, I believe, and I have other parents who have been on this journey tell me, that to get to the clinic and then to go through the clinic, you need to raise a lot more money, and that needs to be kind of institutional money. So the only way to attract that kind of money is through a for-profit. And then one of the silver linings of the CMT1A diagnosis is that it's the most common rare disease without any treatment. It affects 70,000 people in the US, 1.6 million people worldwide. So there is commercial viability if you get a treatment to patients. And there's been both big pharma and VC interest in CMT1A. Novartis acquired a program, and several companies have raised VC funding with CMT1A as one of their programs.
So kind of begs the question, why was a new company with a new approach needed if there was existing kind of pharma interest, which is, by the way, rare in our rare disease world.
Absolutely.
But it feels like there was a real void that you recognized. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm a weird for-profit biotech founder in that I don't see the other companies as competitors. I see them as other shots on goal to get a treatment for my son.
Right.
And so I wish them all luck, and I genuinely have offered support and do support them in any way I can. So a little bit different than a lot of founders in a lot of industries. What I noticed is that the way biotechs work is that they tend to come to the industry with an asset, and then they look for which indications that asset can work for, or they come with the platform technology, right? And so some of those companies thankfully chose CMT1A as one of the indications they wanted to go after. But they didn't start with CMT1A, so they didn't develop their technology with the intention of solving CMT1A. It's more like an after effect of it rather than the driver of it. And so a lot of the programs are not, tailored to solving CMT1A. And as I learned about the biology and the different modalities that are available, I realized that some of the low-hanging fruits that could lead to the first treatment for CMT1A is not what was being researched or invested in, et cetera. And that's what gave me the conviction to start my own biotech.
It's so interesting. So you basically said, by starting actually with your son, the patients in mind, and then building the necessary investments, infrastructure, technologies around that, you felt like that would be a differentiated path and potentially a high-quality shot on goal.
Yeah, in fact, the way most biotechs de-risk their technology is by having multiple indications they go after. The way my approach, which is different, is the way I pitch that I'm de-risking, and this pitch hasn't landed yet in the sense that I haven't raised VC money. But my pitch is I am laser focused on solving this problem, and I'm de-risking it by pursuing different modalities, so different approaches, and having multiple shots on goal. And I'm going to choose a shot on goal that, after several steps, is showing the most promise to lead to a treatment.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. And if I was in your shoes, I would imagine pitching it kind of like, hey, there's some foundational stuff that we're going to need to invest in no matter what to get there. Data, maybe some sample banking, et cetera. And then there's all these kind of more differentiated shots on goal that are going to leverage that common set of infrastructure. Is that how you talk about it? And if so, what are some of those common things that you've started with investing in?
Yeah. So I'm also kind of quote unquote lucky, with CMT1A, in that the CMTA, where I sit on the board, has done a ton of the groundwork for anybody to do research on CMT1A or CMT in general. So we have the cell lines, we have the mouse models, we have the biomarkers, we have great KOLs from all the top universities. So I'm lucky that I'm starting with the foundation already built, and that's helped me move faster and at a lower cost than a lot of parents who are starting from scratch. So I actually look at it a little bit differently. The way I explain my approach to CMT1A is that CMT1A is kind of like a boat with a hole in it. So this boat is constantly filling with water, and we're taking our son to physical therapy and trying to scoop the water out basically, but it's filling faster than we can scoop it out. And the ideal approach is that you custom design a clog that goes in and clogs the hole, right? But that takes a lot of time, and it's a more expensive and longer process. The alternative is that you kind of stick a Band-Aid on it, that still lets the water go in, but it slows the speed at which the water's going in. Ideally, you can scoop it out at the same speed, so it kind of pauses progression. And that Band-Aid can be a lot faster. So my approach is pursuing both of those. So I have the fastest approach to patients, which is the Band-Aid of drug repurposing. It's not going to fully solve the problem. I'm very, fully aware of that. But I do think it'll be something when currently we have nothing. It'll be something that buys us time and stops degrading, my son's health. And while in parallel, I pursue the paths that will fully clog the hole. And I actually have come to believe that the best outcome will actually be a combination of them, because what clogs the hole, maybe you don't want it at the full dose, and maybe it'd be nice to be supplemented with other repurposed drugs that are safe and that work. So
you might not be an expert MD, PhD, but also I think sometimes there are some advantages to that as a patient or sibling or parent that's pursuing this for a totally different reason with a different perspective on what success means. Have you learned anything from pursuing this from the parent's perspective that you want to share?
Yeah. I didn't have the confidence to say what I'm about to say until more recently. Or the lived experience, I don't know which one it is.
Okay.
But there's a few quotes that I really like. So I actually was at a talk from the founder of Waymo, and he was talking about how he works for Google X. He joined Google X because he developed a self-driving car and won a race and something, and people were coming to him and saying, we should build a self-driving car at Google. And he was like, no, it's impossible. And then every 6 months, someone else would come in and say, we should do self-driving cars at Google. And he'd say, no, it's impossible. And then finally one of the founders came to him and said, I know you're going to say it's impossible. I just want to know why, so I can basically tell our investors. And so he went down and sat down trying to explain, why it's impossible. And what he realized is that it's not impossible, and that's how Waymo was born. And his takeaway from that, which is very vulnerable for him to share that story in the first place, is experts are experts from the past. They're not experts of the future. And basically, in order to build the future, sometimes you need to let go of assumptions of the past. And a lot of the other parents I've met, and this is my own experience as well, when you speak with the KOLs, so the key opinion leaders in your area, sometimes they're very married to a certain hypothesis or a certain way of thinking about the indication. And I genuinely think it's usually with all the best intent. But if they're wrong, or if your hypothesis is right, it means all the papers that they've written are wrong, or something like that. And so that's hard for anybody to, be open-minded enough for that. And there was a professor at MIT, I was telling him about some KOL who told me something, and he said, KOLs are basically just people who have been working on the problem for a long time and haven't solved it yet. And, again, these are pretty brutal quotes, but I think the point is the strength, every strength has a weakness, and every weakness has a strength. It's certainly true for my son as well. And I think the weakness that I come to solving this problem with is I don't have a background in bio. I don't have any reason for it to be me that solves this problem other than being a dad. But the strength that comes with that is that I'm looking at everything from first principle. Right. I'm questioning everything. There's no stupid questions, because basically every question I ask has the potential to be pretty stupid. And I think that's an important message for other parents pursuing this journey. Like, just because the world expert or an expert says something or has this opinion doesn't mean you have to accept it or think about it that way.
Yeah. When you're running a company, you have defined resources that you have to put against certain programs or investments. How do you think about those trade-offs of how much to put into repurposing versus foundational stuff versus delivery of a gene therapy? How do you make those choices?
So the first barrier or inclusion criteria for any program is I don't want to be the first at anything. So if someone's pitching me a novel, delivery mechanism, someone pitched to me a phage as a delivery mechanism, which sounds super interesting. The team was super compelling, and I don't have the right skill set to assess if that's viable, and even if it is viable, it's very long and expensive path to the clinic. So what I do with those is, hey, I put my CMTA board hat on. I'm like, hey, I'm here to help. I can put you in touch with all the right people. I want to support you, but I can't fund your research. And then with regards to the programs that I do choose to move forward with, this is something I learned from being on the board, but it's pretty intuitive. Is you gate each investment, so you don't commit the full amount up front. You say, like, what do you need to get to this stage, and then we can assess the data together. And so that what that allows me to do is, for each program, my outlay so far has been relatively low, and I really enjoy working with the partners I work with. I've heard some horror stories, and if I had some of those stories that, and you're nodding your head, so I'm sure you've heard them too. But if I commit 20K and that the person turns out to not do any work or never return my calls, well, okay, it's a loss, but it's a 20K loss, not a 200K loss. And so that's the way I've been gating it. And then now I'm actually, I just started a mouse study for the drug repurposing. And I've planned out how much money I need to get that all the way to IND approval. And I realized that it's going to be hard for me to fund that and the non-viral delivery of siRNA at the same time. So what I've deliberately done is I already had allocated like what I'm going to invest in the programs that are ongoing. Hopefully then we can apply for grants. But the cash that I've raised, I'm saving for drug repurposing because I expect that to work and I want to get it all the way to the clinic. And then I guess like another piece to this puzzle is I've heard from other people who have been on this journey that investors will say, oh, your drug repurposing program sounds promising. Come back to me when you have data. And then you come back when you have data and they say, oh, wow, that data's promising. Come back when you have the next set of data. And then the bar basically keeps getting higher in terms of what they say they want in order to invest. And so I don't want to be in a position where I spread my assets or my cash basically too thin and I'm stuck in a program that is promising but that isn't able to raise money.
Yeah, to use a bad metaphor, you got to know when to actually pull the trigger on taking that shot. You got to, when are you going to take that strike on goal? Because you can't forever pass the ball around and try to figure out the optimal shot. At some point, you have to shoot, which makes total sense. Take me inside your day-to-day. Like, what does it actually look like to be doing all this work? What do you spend your time on? What are you reading?
Yeah.
How does this work?
No 2 days are the same. It's really energizing. I love it. I take a lot of networking opportunities because I feel like I have something to learn from everybody. And so anybody who's interested in CMT, anybody who's an expert in a certain modality or a certain, Schwann cells or myelin or whatever it is, I take those calls. I always learn. And then what's really nice is people in this industry often want to help. So when I meet somebody and I tell them the story and I tell them what I'm doing, they often say, oh, you should speak with this person. So a lot of networking leads to more networking. And sometimes that leads to really interesting partnerships, and sometimes that just leads to me learning about, seeing around the corner a little bit better of what the next steps are going to be on this journey. I use AI a lot. I run everything through OpenAI and Claude, where I have, and actually Philo as well, Biomni, Philo. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
For sure.
And just no 2 days are the same is the main answer to that question.
Yeah, totally fair. And when you think about how and why you use AI, we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
There are times where there just isn't enough data. There isn't enough known. You need the judgment calls of the KOLs who've been doing this for decades.
Yeah.
And there are some times where, the AI answer is going to be pretty good or pretty close or actually better than going around and making a bunch of phone calls. What have you learned in trying this for yourself about where the tooling is useful?
It's that's a well-phrased question from someone who knows from experience. There's different levels of skepticism of results from AI. And I think one of my advisors has like the right healthy skepticism. So we were looking at, for example, we need to do the irradiation of drugs before we mix it with the mouse feed, or as we mix it with the mouse feed before the drug repurposing study. And the different AI tools predict different levels of degradation of the drug as part of the irradiation process, which could rule out certain drugs. Some drugs that said, the irradiation would get rid of 70 to 90% of it. So basically what he said is, these AI insights are great, except they're based on assumptions, and nobody has this data. So there's no historic data to say this drug will be this percent degraded by irradiation. So it's based on certain assumptions, and if those assumptions are right, great. But if one of those assumptions are wrong, this could be totally irrelevant. So it doesn't. He doesn't give it any weight. But I also need to make decisions. So I need to move forward in a certain way. And so AI has really helped me move forward with certain decisions that otherwise I would be totally stuck. I find myself when I take walks, sometimes I'll start a conversation with, I prefer OpenAI when I'm having a conversation. And I'll have a conversation about, tell me more about, fill in the blank. Or I have this hypothesis, how would this work? And what other indications have the same problem as CMT1A and how do they solve it? Those types of things that otherwise would take me a super long time to research, that AI gives me a shortcut.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense to use it as a thought partner, a research accelerator. Do you use it at all from an operational process standpoint within the company? I think about what Notion's been really successful at doing, which is convincing us that if we put all of our data into Notion, that we can build agents on top of it that automate workflows. And I'm curious, does that extend to biotech at all?
I don't have that many. I think managing the day-to-day operations is kind of a strength of mine. I've worked at Notion. I do use Notion a lot. So no, I don't really use AI from that perspective. The operational things I do use AI for is legal, CDAs and that type of stuff. Understanding the nuances of certain emails that I don't necessarily immediately understand, And I use it all the time when I'm, either reading a medical publication or if someone sends me a publication. Sometimes I'll ask AI to summarize it before I read it to see if it's worthwhile, reading the whole thing or just the summary is sufficient. So those are the kind of tactical ways I'll use it on a day-to-day.
It's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, at least in my experience, there's so many different little factoids that are floating around that complete the full picture, and it's hard to keep them all front of mind all the time. So personally, what I've started doing is every time I learn something that's actually new and novel about my specific disease, which is a retinal disease, I'll be great, remember that thing.
Put it in that,
yeah, and remind me next time I go ask you to write a research summary or build a pitch that stat, because we need it for this pitch.
Yeah.
And I've tried to kind of externalize my memory a little bit on things that I end up co-building or co-learning with the AI.
That's smart. So I started using ChatGPT and Claude before they really had the concept of projects, or at least that I remember them having the concept of projects. So I didn't build the muscle memory of using it that way. I think if I were to do it over, I would create a project around certain things. And actually in Philo, but you can fill in the blank. Now what I do is I do start a project for different, so for example, assessing the percent irradiation of a drug, percentage loss of potency due to irradiation of any given drug. I created a project and I was able to have everything in one place, and I found that to be helpful and also helpful to look back, because what's tough when it's not organized in a project is when you want to look back and find an analysis, then it's a little bit harder.
I imagine too, trying to build this capital efficient model in Charcot Tooth, at some point you're probably able to do more and hire less. Is that true?
We're going to find out. For now, I'm a team of one, and and I'm not paying myself anything. It's very it's as lean as it gets. Yeah. I do. Having managed large teams, I do find it appealing to not hire a team. Although I love the the different advisors I work with and everything, but I feel different people fill different gaps in my skill set or my knowledge. And I feel like I've learned to pull in the right people at the right time and not necessarily have somebody full-time yet. And I think that might change as my path becomes clearer. Like there may be a clear skill set that I'm missing consistently. But as I'm still kind of diversified across modalities, and as, it doesn't feel necessary yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is one of the really interesting things about as the tooling evolves, as your personal knowledge and data sets grow, combining those two can kind of give you superpowers and allow you to do a lot more with a lot less people.
Yeah, and AI certainly helps a lot with that.
Yeah.
The other thing that's interesting that I didn't realize before is that bio is an industry where outsourcing is just very common.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, it seems like every company outsources at least part of what they do, from a certain type of experiment to a certain expertise, like a regulatory expertise or legal or whatever. There seems to always be like an outside counsel or advisor there, and I guess like my approach has been, well, I'm outsourcing everything basically, except the project management and the decision of where to allocate capital. But
that's really interesting because it allows you to stay lean and then probably take multiple shots on goal because you're not dependent on a lab that you've built and now have tool to do only drug repurposing and then have to transition that lab fully and the staff in it to do an ASO. Like you've been able to actually just fully focus on what's the right path and then push that to the right actual physical infrastructure.
Yeah. If I would have invested in a lab in the early days, it would not be well suited to what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I think that's really, like, it's an interesting point as people think about replicating your model. It sounds like one of the core learnings is actually like you plus some tooling plus some advisors can get pretty far in terms of at least getting to the de-risk point where making some bigger investments makes sense. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's well said. I'll even add that there's specific vendors or CROs that are world-class at what they do, and if I hired my own team, they wouldn't be as good as them. Like I'm doing my mouse study with an amazing vendor. So I actually think even if I had the funds to do it myself, I wouldn't do it as well as if I was outsourcing all the various parts.
There's only so many people in the world that know how to do stuff well. Right?
Yeah.
And you want the best on your program, so it's amazing when those teams are available fractionally at your service.
Yeah.
So to bring it all together then, as you think about the next 5, 10, 15 years for our full community, what do you dream about? Like, what do you think is the biggest potential change that we could see that would benefit kids like yours?
There's a lot. I think that, the barriers are the cost of getting anything through phase 3 of the clinic. Like that cost is so intimidating that it prevents people from even getting started in a lot of cases, right? And thankfully I didn't follow this advice, but some people told me like, hey, if you can't raise like $5 to $10 million off the bat, don't even try this. And thankfully I didn't listen to that because it's the wrong advice. Nonetheless, it's advice I got from a biotech CEO. So the cost is, and the cost comes from a lot of different things that I think AI could help solve. So there's a desire from the FDA to not use animal models as much and rely on AI. Well, that would significantly reduce the cost. The animal models are very expensive, both for efficacy and for tox. It's hard to imagine how AI could be used for efficacy, but maybe for tox. I don't know. And then the clinical trials, I think it does seem that the FDA has an appetite to make it easier and more streamlined for the rare disease community in particular to run clinical trials. But basically that needs to happen, and I think that needs to happen with advocacy. And then the voucher system is great in creating an incentive where people could potentially get their money back. I still think it would need to be kind of venture philanthropy type investments, but nonetheless, there could be a return. I think what hurts us is that it's only approved, I believe, through 2030 or
2029, yeah. The
2029.
PRV system, yeah.
So it's approved through 2029, but the cycle to get something approved is longer than that time period. So there's not the predictability of an outcome.
Sure.
And I think that's really hard for all of us, including for me. So yeah, my dream would be that all those things are solved and and that AI just tells you, what's going on. I do think we'll eventually be there. It just depends on, what the time horizon is. And yeah, I am hopeful, but I'm also not willing to kind of sit back and just be like, everything's going to be okay in 10 years. I don't need to worry about it. I do think that, it'll only be better if people like you and I and many others, are working hard to make it that way.
Yeah, you're certainly doing the hard work, and I've learned a ton from you.
Thanks.
There's one piece that we don't talk about that often. We talk a lot about AI and program success and what that takes, but at least my experience in building a foundation is like there's some sort of emotional value that comes through trying something. And I'm curious as a parent, like, how does that feel to you to wake up every day and do something that you hope affects your son down the line?
Yeah. So when Ari was diagnosed, it was a really hard, not just day, but like, part of window of my life, like a dark time, like a lot of parents, rare disease, no treatment, and it's progressive. And you just think, you literally think this is the worst news you could possibly get, which it is not, but it takes a long time to realize that. And I ended up joining the board of the CMTA 4 months after the diagnosis, which is a relatively short time afterwards. And as I was being considered for the board, they were actually switching CEOs, and they asked me would I consider throwing my hat in the ring to be the CEO of the CMTA. And I discussed it with my wife, and we both came to the conclusion it's too raw. Like, I don't know that I could at the time be day in, day out, speaking with other people with the disease and just basically be my life being fully consumed by my son's diagnosis. And so I turned down that opportunity. I was really excited to be on the board, but I didn't think I wanted that day to day. And I don't have any regrets. I don't think I'd be the best nonprofit leader. But at some point, that darkness turns to light. And now it feels like the Matrix, where there's the red pill and blue pill, and it's like, you can take this pill and this never happened, or you can take this pill and your life will basically never be the same.
See how deep the rabbit hole goes, or whatever.
Whatever the expression
Morpheus
is.
is saying, yeah.
And I obviously chose that pill, and I have no regrets, and can't imagine doing anything else with my time and energy and the experience I've acquired over my career. Like, there's nothing else that matters enough to me. Like everything, before, I love those products I used to sell, but I was helping, Notion, I'm helping make people more productive. That's not what I wake up like super excited to do. Sorry, founders of Notion. But every morning I can't wait to wake up and like try to move the needle. And it goes back to what I said earlier. Like, I want my competitors to succeed. And there's a lot of companies and researchers or whatever that I meet, and I'm more wearing my CMTA hat than my shark tooth hat, meaning my nonprofit hat, and saying like, hey, I'm here to help you. I'll connect you with whoever you want. If there's a collaboration, benefit for us to work together with Shark Tooth and do research together, great, let's explore it. But that's not, I'm happy to support you with no incentive. And, having that type of being so mission driven is the feeling of fulfillment that I know what I'm working towards every day is amazing, and not something I ever had before.
Yeah, it's really a silver linings playbook that, obviously there's a lot of difficulty, I'm sure, in navigating family life with a diagnosis like this, but at the same time, I'm sure so much light that has come into your life from aligning it to this purpose for Ari and for the 70,000 other kids with CMT. So appreciate very much all the work that you're doing, and I'm sure the full community does as well.
Thanks.